this is going to sound so gross, but the muscle in here had actually started to atrophy. And so I remember yawning one day. I could feel my muscle stretch and tear almost like gum.
Oh.
And it was so horrifying.
Ouchie.
And then I looked in the mirror and I stick my tongue out, and my tongue was actually shedding, pieces of my tongue was shedding from the muscle atrophy of my tongue.
Whoa. This is literally like a body horror scene in a movie.
Yeah.
Like there's a substance.
Yes.
Non-human intelligence living under the sea.
Non-human intelligence.
They've been here.
Yep.
They've been here longer than us.
Jeremy prefers NHI.
You're goddamn right, I do.
I'm non-human intelligent.
Yeah,
Brock, shut the fuck up. I gotta get sync claps. Will you shut up? You talk way too much. God damn it. Studio.
Taylor.
Brock, I know you can't clap your hands, so I'll just say your name. Oh, he's gonna try.
He's gonna go for
Brock.
it.
I was gonna give it to you, but there you go.
And Làyla, if you could just
guy.
say your name and clap your hands together. This is so I can sync the audio later.
Oh, amazing. Làyla.
Nice. Okay. Whoa, 3 times. Holy shit. Relax, Làyla. Relax. Okay. This is gonna be a treat. We are sitting down. Okay. So firstly, I should say Brian's not here. We fired him. And we said, Brock, wheel that chair into your fucking room and get on the mic, because you're going to co-host this episode with us. And we are sitting down with our new friend Làyla,
Or Làyla.
or Làyla. I mean, really depends on
Where you are
and how you pronounce it when you read it when you first read it, which I thought it was Làyla, but now I'm saying Làyla because she says Làyla.
Right. But also Làyla.
But also, if you're Mexican, you're going to say Làyla. If you're not Mexican, you're probably going to say Làyla.
Or maybe it's the other way around. I'm really not sure.
Now, I'm not Mexican. Taylor's not Mexican. Brock, I don't know. I'm not going to assume.
Not Mexican. I
Okay,
got that
well,
covered.
then, but we're going to settle with Làyla. Brock, you can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm very excited to talk to you, Làyla, because you're a bit of a jet setter. I know that you're dealing with a whole slew of health issues, but today I think our primary focus is going to be on myasthenia gravis, MG. And guess what? We've actually covered this illness on the podcast before, and surprise, surprise, I don't fucking remember what that is. So let's start there. Làyla, if you could please fill us and our guests in on what is myasthenia gravis.
Yeah, so I actually do remember that episode because when I was first diagnosed in New York City, I was desperate for more information. And I was actually already familiar with your guys' podcast years ago. And I was like, well, they interview so many people. Maybe they've interviewed someone with myasthenia, and you guys had.
Crazy.
But to the people that don't know, so myasthenia gravis affects your ability to breathe, not because of your lungs, but more so the communication between your brain and your muscles. That connection is kind of messed up. So it's actually your diaphragm that isn't functioning properly. It's also difficult to walk. It's difficult to speak. So today I'm actually flaring a little bit. So I might be slurring a little bit every now and then. Weakness of your neck, especially. Some people have a really hard time holding your neck up. I know I really struggled with that in the earlier days. And for me, I had the fun version of myasthenia where I had some muscle atrophy of my face and my tongue.
Right. Isn't there was,
Wow.
I believe it was a refractory form of myasthenia gravis.
Yes.
So what does, how does that set you apart from, I don't know, some other pleb who's got like normal myasthenia gravis?
I know I'm quite envious actually of the people with normal myasthenia, because when you're refractory, all that means is that you're either extremely resistant to treatment, so you have to be on multiple infusions to stay alive or have a normal quality of life, or like me, which that's also true. You can't really seem to get off prednisone. So I've been on prednisone for wow, I think like almost 4 years now. And
Wow.
I
Holy
can't
shit.
get off of it. Yeah, it's because anytime I try to get off of it, I end up back in the ICU.
Right. Right.
And prednisone
I
has
know,
like a whole
oh
slew
man,
of.
a whole slew. And I will say this. I know this is well, you're never supposed to like comment on another person's like body or whatever. Like, and I get it, guys.
Someone
I get
told
it.
Jeremy that.
Someone said that. I don't know. But I have to. I just have to chime in here. The fact that you've been on prednisone for that long, I'm a little bit shocked
Oh, you're
that
throwing
you
a
don't have the moon face. You don't have
Right.
like typically with long-term chronic use of prednisone, you end up with it's fascinating.
I will admit, I had the same reaction. I went, "Oh yeah, you don't look like it."
Mhm. Yeah. There is a look. There is a look to long-term prednisone use. Now, I don't know. Sorry, Làyla. Like maybe you're like, well, actually, guys, my face used to be
My face is 4
literally
times smaller than
a
this.
spaghetti string. So maybe you have noticed a difference, but like you don't
Yes.
you don't look like someone who would be on chronic prednisone.
Well, so it's funny you say that because I have actually crashed out a lot about the change in my appearance.
Right.
Because it has changed my face a lot, but also I really just learned how to hide it better. So like if you're a woman, you can get like a certain haircut to hide the cheek part of it, and then also it just fluctuates so much for me. So some days I'm like, I don't want to go outside because my face feels like a balloon. And then other days it's a lot smaller. And then also obviously like the double chin issue where you're like, like in photos, I'm like, like I can notice it. But I will say it has gotten a lot better over time for me because I am so stringent about my diet of like salt and sugar. But then also, I mean, when I look back at photos, it just was so horrible. Like it was just really bad, but I was on a higher dosage then.
Right.
I was first prescribed 60 milligrams of prednisone a day.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you must have been having the craziest fucking food cravings. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I personally, like I've been on prednisone.
Wait, what were you on it for?
I've been on prednisone a number of times. It's usually to prep me for surgery. So it's short stints, high dose. And I actually loved it.
But weren't you on it for like a longer
time? No.
Recently?
I've only done it for like 7 days. It's awesome for like 7 days. I'm sure after 7 days, it's terrible. One thing I did, and Brock, I know you had something to say, but before you chime in there, I just want to ask Làyla. You were saying that very clever use of hair can hide maybe like the moon face. Brock, I don't think you're on prednisone, but Brock's head is a fucking balloon. Look at this thing. Do you think his hairstyle is helping him out at all?
Sure, you're just ruthless with Brock today. Oh my goodness.
Brock, what are you doing with your hair, dude?
It's called just thinning. I got my father's hair. It's thinning. I've had people buy me growth hair stuff to do. Okay,
Brock, your hair, the hair on your head grows like the hair on Brian's face. I'm ripping into everybody. You don't even have to be.
You really are, Brian. We're ruthless.
Anyway,
we're just
sorry,
having
Brock,
a
go
day.
ahead. Go ahead, you talk.
So
go ahead, Brock. I guess it's your fucking show. Go ahead.
My thought was, is that the hardest thing for you? Is like the change with yourself, like over time as you see it, or would you say that there's something harder with having this type of diagnosis?
Yeah, so I would say definitely both. And I hate how that sounds because it sounds vain, but there is a sense of grief that you go through when not only are you going through all these horrible health changes where your quality of life is completely impacted and your life is completely different now, but then also the loss of control where I just didn't feel pretty. I felt, and it's still something I struggle with to this day, where some days I'm like, wow, like I look so different. And but also there's also a weirdness to that too, because sometimes when you don't look sick or when you're really good at hiding it, so to speak, it can make it really difficult for other people in your life to really understand what you're going through.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I will say to that, Làyla, is that, I know you preface that with like, I know this might sound weird. I think if anybody thinks that sounds weird, that's a pretty detached like thought. That's a pretty like, you've got to be pretty unaware about how like kind of crazy that
I mean,
thought
we're all
is
just
to
like
think that that's vain, because like
we're creatures in the world,
of course, and like there's
we're-
so many things that are tied to the way that you see yourself, right? You're like confidence is a really fickle thing, and it's a really powerful thing. And when you feel like you have none of it, it can really have a pretty detrimental effect on your day to day.
Like Kyle and I would have this this particular thing that I want to attach this to has come up between Kyle and I. Kyle is my partner, Làyla, where something super trivial like Kyle being like, hey, let's clean up this whatever these things, because there's like people coming over, and
Taylor hates when Kyle asks him to clean,
and I might say something like, oh man, like why do you care if it looks like people live here, for example, okay? And Kyle would say something like, it has nothing to do with me caring about what another person thinks. It has to do with like how I feel when this place looks this way. It doesn't have anything to do with somebody else's opinion of this place. It has to do with how it makes me feel. And I feel that way in terms of how people feel about their appearance is not necessarily tied to like the way that other people think, and being vain in the sense that I care that another person perceives me this way, but that feeling good about how you feel and look is like your right to feel a way about yourself. And we are creatures in the world, and like the way that we look and the way that we'd like ourselves to look is like a very valid thing.
And also to kind of throw on top of that, maybe this is kind of a great like segue into to bring it back to your experience, Làyla, is that it seems like this was something that was sort of just sprung upon you at some point in your life. So tell us about that. Like, at what point did you get the diagnosis, and how did that come about? Like, was this a long process to get a diagnosis of myasthenia gravis, or did you have other things going on too in your life? I know you have a whole there's a whole laundry list of shit that you're going through, but take us through like the diagnosis process of MG.
Yeah, so I'm 30 now. I'll be 31 in May. But I would say my health issue started senior year of college when I was a young little bird. I don't know. And I was having migraines every day for all of my senior year. Not quite literally every day, but then you get like the migraine hangover. And I developed a lot of weird sensitivities over that time period. I became extremely sensitive to sound and light, and I remember noise just being really distorted a lot of the times, especially in a crowded room. I couldn't really distinguish speech as well anymore, and at first I thought it was my hearing, but my hearing would always come back perfect. And then quite literally, I had moved to Chicago, and one day, I had a really bad episode I had just been diagnosed with something called allodynia, which is where you have, basically, I don't want to just say skin pain because it doesn't really feel like skin pain always, but just imagine a burning sensation like on your scalp, on your chest, on your back. And for me, it had gotten, I don't know if it was because of the migraines or what, it had gotten so severe that I was constantly waking up drenched in sweat from the pain.
Whoa.
And I couldn't sleep with clothes or with like sheets on me because just like the sensation of having clothing on me was so like unbearably painful. And I'd go to doctors, and yeah, I'll admit it sounded a little bit kooky, like, oh, I've been having these migraines for a year and I'm having this pain. And then they would look at my skin and they'd be like, well, you don't have a rash. Like, I don't really know what to tell you. And it wasn't until I was in Chicago where I had a really bad episode of Allodynia. I went to bed, and then when I woke up with this condition called visual snow syndrome.
Oh
And then
my
that's
God.
when my health exploded. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay, so first let me just
Do you
state.
know what that is?
Yeah, it's well, I think I have an idea because I actually just read an application where someone was talking about visual snow, and I looked it up, and I was like, "Whoa, this is super trippy." It was a very specific type of visual snow, though, but we can get into that. But before we do,
Can I guess what it is?
Allodynia, yes, when we get there,
Okay.
Allodynia, super fascinating, a type of neuropathic pain where ordinary non-painful stimuli, such as, like you were saying, light touch, clothing, temperature changes even, can cause significant pain. And it's a symptom of an underlying condition most of the time, like migraines, which you just stated, fibromyalgia is another one, or nerve damage, typically diabetic neuropathy. So if you have diabetes and you end up with neuropathy,
I feel like we talked about it once before, or we've certainly talked to people who have had like similar experiences with like clothing being like painful to wear.
Yeah. So clothing, but even temperature, right? Like it's like mildly warm. All of a sudden you're like feeling excruciating pain like all over your body. That's wild. So then, okay. So, and again, it's oftentimes a symptom of some other underlying condition. Now, the visual snow, I mean, that's a bit of a mindfuck. You wanted to guess. Go for it.
Is it like an extreme version of like seeing floaters? Where
I suppose that's possibly like one way of putting it. I mean, really, well, you go for it, Làyla. Let's hear about your visual snow experience.
It's a little bit different for everyone, but that is part of it. So I do remember in the very beginning, especially when I would be out in daylight, the floaters were pretty severe. I like to describe it as kind of a 90s broken staticky television.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about it, because it's not an eyesight condition, it's a neurological condition. I think the worst part for me was accepting that I couldn't ever escape it. So even when I would try to close my eyes and go to sleep, it would wake me up because I would have all these like flashing static things like basically like on your eyelids as you're trying to go to bed. It was awful. And
so it's
also,
like the white noise, like the white snow. Like
it's like you, Làyla, your explanation of it being like bad 90s TV is almost perfect. I can actually in
like when you watch a VHS tape that's been like fucked with.
Yeah, like in Final Cut Pro, like in the software that I use to edit these episodes, the video version, there's an effect called bad TV, and you can add like you can add extra like de-interlace, and you can add extra like white noise or pink noise. I'll actually do it right now on this. So if you're just listening to the episode, if you go over to the YouTube and go over to the YouTube, what am I fucking 80? Go to YouTube and go to this episode. I'm going to do it right now. This is like a vision, or a sort of a way you could visualize what visual snow would be. Now imagine this is the way you're fucking walking around the world, seeing the world. Yikes.
Well, since I'm experiencing this moment right now, I can't really see.
You're in it.
Oh, I'm in it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm in it.
Whoa!
Yes. So this looks like, well, you know what? Whoa! Ironically enough, I was outside shoveling snow the other day, and I had this moment where I was like, holy shit, I'm seeing a trillion floaters, because it's the whole light is white. It's like, you know how even on a cloudy day when it's covered in white snow, it's like you need sunglasses because it's just, the world is just like too bright. I felt like I just like couldn't see anymore, and I had all these floaters, and I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Maybe I had white snow while I was shoveling snow.
Or maybe not. You know, maybe your eyes were just tripping out to like the brightness of the whiteness of snow. I don't know. But Làyla, so you have this, you're going through migraines, you're going through all these like things that seemingly are disconnected, yet my guess is that somebody went, oh, these are all comorbidities with something else going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the snow because after I got visual snow, I hated winter. In Chicago, I mean, the winter is, pretty intense. Because of that, because snow, because it's so white and it's everywhere, I had to relearn how to drive again. I had to take a break from driving because it was really difficult with the snow like all the light reflecting back to you, it made the floater so much worse.
Yeah,
And
right.
then
It's
also,
just, yeah, just don't. It's
He's
snow
gonna freak
on
out, like,
snow
I know
on
I have
snow.
visual
It's just you got
It's
visual
always
snow in
snowing.
your eyes. You got literal snow outside. Yeah, totally.
but also I had it. I mean, I still have it now. It has gotten more bearable over time, but I think what I really struggled with the most were, I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's called palinopsia. I'm not sure, but a lot of people with visual snow get it with it. It's like you see after images of things.
Mhm.
So imagine you're
Oh.
staring at your computer screen and then you look up and away.
Mm-hmm.
The after image of the
Mm.
computer screen is going to be like superimposed to whatever
Mhm.
you're looking at next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's really trippy. It's really terrible, especially for someone like me that, because I'm a Mexican immigrant, I like to joke with my, other Latina friends that growing up, we never did drugs because that was so taboo
Mhm.
as a Mexican immigrant in the United States. Like, you never wanted to do anything that might get you or your family into trouble, especially since I was not a US born citizen. I'm a US citizen now, but I'm naturalized. So I had to go through the immigration process that took a very long time. And so I remember strangely developing this phobia of like, oh, I'm never going to do drugs because I'm afraid to for this like legal standpoint. But then
Mhm.
also, I don't know. I think it worked that my parents kind of drilled it into me like, what if you take this drug and then you're never the same again? And so like I had that phobia for the longest time. And
Don't
I
even
just stayed
smoke
away.
weed
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
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 I never tried weed until I was diagnosed with myasthenia when I was 27. Because by that point I was like, well, the
that's
worst
what-
that has
that's what
already
did it.
happened has
Yeah,
happened.
that's what gave it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you meant it gave it you the myasthenia gravis.
No.
No.
So, but
Right.
like for some people, unfortunately, drug use does lead to visual snow for whatever reason. But in my case, I had never tried it at that time. So,
Yeah. It just made your visual snow
But it is,
pretty.
it's like a certain-
Yeah. Oh,
It's like, oh, this is
the
visual
snowfall
snow.
is
This,
so pretty.
yeah, wait, it's all
So-
different colors.
So
now.
what is so?
Sorry, Brock. What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
God, Brock, you talk so much, dude.
I was just going to
go
say,
ahead,
like,
go ahead, Brock. It's your show.
It is
Fuck
a certain, it is a certain vintage though of parent who like scares the shit out of us and's like, don't touch it because it's gonna do this and it's gonna do that. Now it's like, who cares? We're like, there's teenagers running around with whatever. But like, I grew up and my parents were like, don't touch it because you want to be a Paralympian. Don't touch it. And I didn't try it till I was far after in my career for the same
Yeah.
reason, because parents of a certain generation just put the fear of whatever in you and you're too afraid to touch it.
Mhm.
where does this all connect? Like you see you get to Chicago, you have this like crazy episode, you get the visual snow, and are all the dots like connected for you here, or does that happen later?
It happened many, many, many years later, unfortunately. And I'm actually gonna I'm gonna turn this on for a second because wait, is that too
Whoa.
distracting?
Whoa.
No, it's actually.
So I'm doing this
I feel
to
like I'm on
show
drugs.
people like
Let's
yeah,
go.
like it's so distracting, and then you just have to go about your world and just be like, oh, I'm not distracted at all, and I'm trying to follow a conversation, but you have all this visual stimuli in your way, and
Whoa.
yeah, well, it doesn't look exactly like this, but also I thought it was neat, so I was like, I'll turn it on. I don't know, and for the whimsy,
This
and
is-
because I'm nervous. I'm
This
like,
is genius. This is fucking genius. I don't even have to do anything with the video editing.
It
You
actually
just did
looks crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a light in your room. It looks like an effect that's been put on.
Oh, fuck my my fucking Palinopsia. Oh shit.
no, but yeah, it made no sense. My medical trajectory, it made no sense at the time. It still in many ways doesn't make sense, but I will say, for a really long time, for many years, and I think this is the experience of a lot of women, young women, I was just told I had anxiety.
Yeah.
Even
yeah.
getting diagnosed with visual snow came much later, because I kept trying to go to doctors and they would check my eyeballs and they would be like, you're fine. Like, and visual snow it had only been a recognized syndrome for a couple years by then. And even with the Allodynia, it took me a long time to fight for a diagnosis for that. I mean, that went on for years where the pain was getting out of hand. And doctors just kept telling me, like, I don't know, you just seem like an anxious 5'1" young woman. I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not anxiety. Like, because, and everything started to stack up, even with the myasthenia. And that was the most heartbreaking part about the entire medical journey, was that when I was living in New York City, I could tell that my body was failing me again in ways that I couldn't really articulate. That was different than the visual snow. Like, it still all felt connected because my visual snow was ramping up for some reason, and I couldn't tell why. And I had this strange intuition that I was about to get really sick for a really long time. And so I started going to rheumatologists and neurologists, and I kept explaining, like, I have this crushing fatigue that does not feel normal. I can't get my heart rate to go down below 120 beats per minute, even when I'm sitting.
Oh my
I
goodness.
don't feel anxious. So I can't really figure out what's going on. And I remember distinctly, I don't know if you guys have this in Canada, but in New York City at the time, a couple years ago, there were these like mopeds that you could rent, kind of like those Lime scooters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We do have them here in Halifax. Yeah.
Yep. Crazy folk.
Yeah. Well, like with the app where you can just
Yeah, you just rent
on
it
a
like
whim,
right
rent
on the
it.
spot. Yeah, and typically, you actually hear that where they do it. You actually do have to like fill out a. It's so fucking annoying. And I don't think they do it. Like, we've rented them in the States in a number of different cities. You don't have to do this, but here in Halifax, you have to fill out a little survey, which is it's like do you know which side of the road to ride on, and like you know what should you or shouldn't you be wearing a helmet?
Yeah,
I think but they don't say there is no button that says is your eyesight constantly filled with a little dots and lights, and if you look left or right, the vision will follow. It's just like daily hallucinations. That's not in there. So, but anyway,
no.
continue.
No, I started doing all these things on my bucket list, and one of those things was, it's so irresponsible, I feel like, to get like a moped in New York City, especially when you're like 5'1" like me, and I had to like scoot my butt on the very corner of the seat, and just like I could barely touch the floor with my tippy toes, and I was like zooming around. And then I remember when I got off the moped, my hands had been stuck, like I couldn't ungrip, like my hands were stuck in a fixed position.
Oh God.
And I'd go to my doctor and be like, I'm noticing all these weird symptoms, and they'd be like, I don't know what to tell you. Your blood work is normal for now. But it wasn't until finally I had thought I maybe did something with like wrong with my jaw. Maybe I bit something wrong, or maybe I had a cavity, or maybe even TMJ. But I kept noticing this weird sensation in my cheek. And then, this is going to sound so gross, but the muscle in here had actually started to atrophy. And so I remember yawning one day, and I could feel like you don't feel it truly, because muscle atrophy is technically like a painless sensation a lot of the times. But I could feel my muscle stretch and tear almost like gum.
Oh.
And it was so horrifying.
Ouchie.
And I remember like not being able to move my jaw properly, and then trying to feel inside, because it's not like it's bleeding or anything. It's like all inside the cheek, and then just feeling like a hole, like a mass, like where like, you know, the muscle had been and it wasn't there anymore. And then I looked in the mirror and I stick my tongue out, and my tongue was actually shedding, like pieces of my tongue was shedding from like the muscle atrophy of my tongue.
Whoa.
This is literally like a body horror scene in a movie, like it's substance.
Yes,
like,
and because it's like,
you know?
that's why we want pain, is so that when you feel that sensation, to be like, don't move like this, something's wrong. I should try to see somebody who's inevitably going to tell me that nothing's wrong with me.
Yeah, it's like some people have. You can keep that fucking light on if you want. I love it. Totally up to you. It's like when people have. I guess I should have said, we didn't even state this for the people just listening. Làyla it's been on now for a while, but like 10, 15 minutes ago, she turned on a disco light, and it was just going off on screen the whole time. It reminds me of when people have, I think this is kind of a recurring nightmare that like many people have had before, like a sort of sort of like collective consciousness type of nightmare that like many people have. I've never had it, but I know Bry's had it. Maybe you have, where like you look in the mirror and all of a sudden just all your teeth start falling out. It's like that. That's one of the scarier things I can think of. And like for you, yes, it wasn't your teeth, but like not far off. Just like looking in the mirror and going, "Oh my God, there's my tongue is slothing off out of nowhere, and I don't know why." Like how did you fucking scream? Like what did you do in this moment where you're like, "Oh my God, my body is literally just shutting down"?
I felt like I had at that point been battling really weird diagnoses that all seemed to not be connected at all. Like in that year span, I had randomly developed adult onset asthma, and I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Well, you just moved to New York City. Maybe, I don't know, like maybe you're just not used to pollution." And I was like, "I don't think that makes sense, but okay." And then I had developed erythromelalgia, which is when your hands and feet turn red and swell like in response to heat, which is like an uncomfortable. It was pretty mild for me, but just like a bunch of these random things. And then that happened with like the tongue and the muscle stuff. I remember I called one of my best friends in the Midwest, and I was just sobbing on the phone. I like could not hold it together anymore. And I was like, "I know this sounds insane, but I need you to fly to New York City tomorrow because I feel like I'm dying. Like I feel so unwell, and I'm so scared I'm not going to get believed again. And this time it feels really serious because at least with visual snow, it technically wasn't life or death, even though, I mean, in some ways it's psychologically, I mean, it's not great to not be believed, right? And like also the pain aspect from the Allodynia.
And also if you're driving a moped in New York with visual snow, I mean, life or death.
Exactly.
Whatever. Right. Yeah.
I promise I'm a fabulous driver, and I have since learned to drive with my visual snow. But yeah, no. And so we were basically both just sobbing on the phone because I was like, I don't think I can do this again. And so he flew to New York City. We were going to all these hospitals together. And I thought by having backup there, it would help. And I was so shocked to find out it didn't. And then I just kept like getting worse and worse. So then by the second day, I couldn't speak anymore because I had completely started to stutter, and I was slurring and I couldn't stop it. I thought I was having a stroke.
Oh my God.
And I remember we were at the movie theater, and I had like those, because I needed a break from all the hospital visits where like we weren't getting any answers. I was like, I just want to go to an AMC. I want to decompress, and I want to order these mac and cheese bites. And I remember sitting in the seat and feeling like I was sinking into it and feeling very heavy and trying to get these stupid mac and cheese balls into my mouth. And I just couldn't, like my tongue, it was not coordinating. I was slurring. And so I was like, Abe, I think I'm having a stroke. We should get out of here. And then we called my neurologist, and he had the galls to tell me, he's like, I think you just didn't have enough potassium today. I think you should just eat a banana.
That's what I tell my girlfriend. Like, that's what I tell my girlfriend when she's, I say the same thing. I go, babe, eat a banana, drink some water.
60% of the time.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally.
How did you not punch the medical professional like through all of this? Like I'm sitting here listening to you going, I would have punched somebody. Like
no, you can't punch anything, Brock. You can't punch shit when you're low in potassium, dude. It's just it's impossible.
Obviously, but
if you're gonna want to punch,
my goodness, like
you're gonna have to eat a banana.
I just,
Is there like like when you're going?
Let her answer the fight, Brock's. I mean, I know Brock talks way too much, but I mean, we gotta let him let her answer the question. He's only here once in a while, and probably will never be back again based on how many fucking questions he's asking this time around. Go ahead, Làyla.
Hearts to you, Brock. It's okay. I was gonna say, so it was interesting because I remember, I don't know what kind of state I looked in at that moment. I don't know what kind of vibe I was giving off, but I do remember vividly, and this is not funny because the individual that came up to me was unhoused. She just happened to be unhoused. It's funny because she was a local New Yorker, and I remember we were at the CVS. We had just gotten off the phone with the neurologist, and this woman came up to us to ask for money, and she got one look at me, and I was just like slurring and like moving around weird and so weak. And she looked so scared. She was like, never mind. Like, I'm just gonna, and then she like walked away, and Abe and I were looking at each other like, wait, like, like, do I look that bad? Like, am I like, should I go to the hospital right
I
now?
have money for you. Come back.
Oh no!
Like when you're going to the hospital, like however, like all these times that you're going to the hospital, like, is there a point at which, or is it at every point, I guess, do you go when you start to talk to somebody? Are you like, okay, I've been to see this person, this person, this person, this person. Everybody thinks that it's like, everybody thinks it's like this minor thing, or that like I have anxiety or I have this thing. Like, do you have like a spiel that you give to people to try to illustrate, like, listen, everybody has downplayed this. It is something else. And I need somebody to fucking look.
Yeah, I think that's like the most devastating part of all of this is that I had gone to quote unquote all the best hospitals in the world, allegedly, and in New York City, New York University, Mount Sinai, a bunch of other places, and they all turned me away without even doing any blood testing.
Wow.
They all said it was just anxiety, and I kept telling them, like, no, it's getting to the point I can't breathe. Like, I'm waking up at night repeatedly suffocating, and I'm waking up confused. I like was having a hard time figuring out where I was, and I explained to them like my limbs feel like I have a bunch of rocks tied to me, and it's getting worse because at first it was only happening at nighttime, but now it's in the daytime. I feel like I'm not breathing properly, and then they would just like have you like hook you up to the oxygen, little thing like, oh, your oxygen's at 98%, you're fine. But actually in myasthenia, that's not an accurate way to determine if you're breathing or not, because it's a diaphragm issue, and it can suddenly like it just fluctuates extremely. But no, I hate to admit this, but I eventually gave up because we tried going to hospitals for 2 weeks straight. Eventually he had to fly back, and then I was just stuck in my apartment, unable to move. And I was like, I know how absurd that sounds, because like, well, why don't you try? We had tried everywhere, and it was getting really demoralizing. And it got to the point where I found a neurologist, or not a rheumatologist online in the Bronx. And I explained my situation to her, and she was like, I think you have myasthenia. Let's test you. And it came back positive. It was really that easy. My blood work came back positive. And the crazy thing was that she was like, but I can't treat it because actually a neurologist needs to treat you. So then I tried to get an appointment with a neurologist, and all the neurologists were like, it's a 9-month waiting period. There's nothing we can do for you.
What?
So
That's
I
Canada
wasted
time.
in my apartment for 9 months like that.
Wait,
Okay,
so
Jesus
I'm
Christ,
interested,
it's
like,
so fucking insane. Just
what
the
did
way
you had said that you had talked to a like when so you had seen a neurologist and then a rheumatologist after, and then kind of was referred back to seeing a neurologist.
Yeah. The rheumatologist goes, "Hey, I can give you this diagnosis.
Yeah,
but I can't be the one that actually treats you."
Because it sounded like the whole time we were speaking, in my head I was thinking I feel like a neurologist is like the like most knowledgeable about like kind of a lot of these things that are going on. They didn't think of identifying this as obviously they didn't. Like, what did the neurologist have to say before you ended up getting the diagnosis from the rheumatologist?
Yeah, he was just kind of like, oh, this is great news. You have an answer, but I don't treat myasthenia. That's a different kind of neurologist that needs to treat you. And so I had basically set up care strategically with all these doctors, thinking like, okay, if something goes wrong, like I'm covered. I won't have to go through the waiting list. Like because when you're a first time patient, it takes you forever to get seen. And then little beknownst to me, I happened to get diagnosed with the one condition, myasthenia, where apparently it's not just any neurologist that needs to treat you. It's a neuromuscular neurologist. And that's why the waiting lists were so long. And, but then I would tell them like, but what am I supposed to do in the meantime? And they were like, well, just go back to the ER if you get worse. And I was like, I have been worse. Like, what do you mean? So it was just like this horrible cycle loop that I had gotten stuck in, unfortunately.
How old were you? Like, how many years ago was this when you got your diagnosis?
I was 27 when I finally got diagnosed. Yeah.
And it started when you were like 20?
I was 22. Looking back, I definitely had it when I was 22. It was just so mild, especially like I was working at a hospital when I was 23, 24, and this was like during COVID. So yeah, I was 24, and I remember getting COVID. And I remember all my coworkers that were so much older than me recovered so much faster than I did. And it took me at least 3 months to get back to work. And in the beginning, I was like, well, COVID's like this crazy thing. We don't know anything about it. So I just chucked it up to, but yeah, now looking back, it's like my immune system was never good to begin with. And also, incidentally enough, I once had gotten a UTI. And if you're myasthenic, you're not supposed to take macrolide antibiotics. And I remember taking the macrolide antibiotics and feeling so weak, like I could barely walk to the restroom. My breathing fell off, and I was like, maybe I'm having an allergic reaction. But if you're myasthenic, you can't get that. Similarly to the same way, like Botox, you can't get that because it's a neurotoxin, and so it'll interfere with your myasthenia.
Wow. So it's an autoimmune disease, right? That affects the neurology and gives you all the like downstream.
Yeah, chronic
symptoms.
autoimmune neuromuscular disorder is like the categorization of it.
Man, autoimmune diseases
they're just the wildest thing. They really are.
And they always seem to take like a quite a long time. You know, unless you've got maybe like
unless you're a man,
one of the super popular ones.
Yeah, unless you're a lucky old man.
Well, that's also the thing.
And they go, well, men don't have anxiety, so it must be something else.
But that's also the craziest thing about
men are never deficient in. Men always eat bananas, enough bananas.
Yeah,
they have
potassium up the yin yang. That's also the crazy thing about autoimmune diseases in general. Is like I don't quote me. I could be wildly wrong at this, but it's a much higher proportion of women who have.
I think we've heard that on the show before,
I feel like it's some. I want to say off the top of my head, it's something like 70-30. Like it's
Brock, how much is it? What is the number? What's the split there?
I'll agree with him. I think it's 70-30. Although I do know a male in my life that does have an autoimmune system challenge, but he didn't go through it nearly as difficult of a process as we're talking about, which is very, very wrong. And like, it just blows my mind.
Well, Brock, you're the expert.
It's 80%.
80%. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So Brock, I guess you're not so much an expert after all. So Làyla, I'm curious to know, you know, we've talked to a lot of people on the show over the last 10 years, and you know, it's very common to hear from someone express how their illness sort of gets in the way of like living this like almost spontaneous life. And a big thing that comes up is like people go, oh, well, like, you know, my ability to travel has kind of been tanked or whatever. You live in France now. You're from Mexico. You lived in for long period of time in the States. You now live in France. You're going through all this crazy medical stuff. You're also like trying to swim in the sea of medical fuckery that is the United States. Like the medical system there is a nightmare financially. I mean, I can't even imagine like me living with what I live with, living in the States and trying to get healthcare. So how do you end up in France, and what does the care look like in a completely different country, in a completely different system for someone who lives with myasthenia gravis?
Yeah, so and that's a funny thing about my myasthenia, where like it should slow me down. My friends always joke that like the universe gave me myasthenia because otherwise I'd be too unstoppable. And I'm just constantly globetrotting and doing all these things. I will say, just because I'm globetrotting doesn't mean I'm always healthy. And even it was true from the very beginning when I first got diagnosed. I told myself, I really don't want this to make me become an agoraphobic person, just afraid to leave my house, because the more I exerted myself, the more weak I would become. Myasthenia is a really weird condition where you can't just bear through the pain. I mean, you can, but then you immediately get weaker. It's almost like, I like to tell people, it's like a video game. Your stamina depletes so quickly, and it's not something too where you can be like, well, I'll just feel weak for the rest of the day. No, it impacts your breathing. You can go into what we call a myasthenic crisis, where you have to get intubated. And there's been many times where I almost got intubated because I'll admit, yeah, sometimes it was not the wisest decision, where like I'd be in Chicago And I actually made the decision there at the time to not tell my friends about my myasthenia or be very vague about it. I didn't want to get treated differently. So I remember we would all be out in like the club, and I was very strategic about how I would dance, because I'm sure a lot of my friends actually might be confused at this. Like, what do you mean you have all these ailments? Like, because I had kind of figured out a way to appear normal, and I'm sure a lot of them would be like, "What? We would see you dancing." It's like, well, if you were paying attention, I actually wasn't dancing. I was doing like I don't know, like, like in the movies, like the white girl, like club dancing, or you're just like barely, and it's
that's how Brock dances.
It is 100%.
But no, I just, I had a lot of instances like that where, so including now, like, yes, I am in France, but I am still very much doing infusions all the time. I have to do daily injections for Zilbrysq. I have now done a thymectomy, which is when, they take the thymus gland that's like right above your heart. They remove that, which I did like the newer version one, which is where it's like the robotic one where they kind of like skewer you like a shish kebab, and then they get your thymus out. And I've also done a CAR T clinical trial for my myasthenia because my case is so severe, where I was just constantly relapsing. And no amount of infusions was keeping me alive, or not alive, but like stable. There was one point I was doing maybe like 7 infusions a month.
Oh my God.
But like that went on for years. So then like my veins started to like burst a lot, and then I'm down to one good vein. I call him Paul. So I'm like, okay, Paul, please. Like, I really don't want to port. And then, yeah. So yes, I am in France. Yes, I do travel a lot, but, behind the scenes, what I don't show to people, I'm actually quite ill. I'm a quite ill. I'm a quite Victorian sickly child behind the scenes.
What did the CAR T? Are you doing that now, or did you do that? And how did that work out?
So this is actually so funny because I did it in Buffalo, New York last year.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh shit!
Wait, what?
So unbeknownst
the Kia
to
boys,
me,
the Kia boys are on the loose. The Kia boys are on the loose.
Kia
She's getting
boys?
CAR T therapy, and the Kia boys are gonna steal her fucking Kia.
What the
Yeah.
fuck is going on?
Well, she got CAR T therapy. She's in Buffalo. Obviously, she's gonna get her car stolen by the Kia boys because she
Yes.
drives a Kia, and she's getting CAR T therapy.
Hold on, I've heard of the Kia boys before. Did the Kia boys steal your car?
Yeah, the Kia boys stole
Yes,
her car.
they did.
What? While she was getting
Yeah,
CAR T.
they did.
No, stop it.
They actually did. I thought I was losing my mind when it happened because I was like,
Oh my God.
what kind of, like, it's on one hand, it's so whimsy. I couldn't have thought of it myself. Like, what a funny, life side quest just thrown my way. And then on the other side, I was like, how am I going to drive to my infusions? Like, what is this?
Yeah. How can you get
Yes.
to your CAR T infusions without a car T?
Yes.
Crazy that I guessed that. That's a wild guess. I just heard Buffalo and immediately I just knew.
You didn't guess
I just
that,
fucking
you
knew.
liar.
No, I did. That was a good
you
guess,
knew
right?
that. No, you knew that.
Yeah,
No, you knew that. Okay, well,
She said
but
CAR T. I heard
yeah.
Buffalo. I just
besides
thought
the Kia boys stealing your car, which is extremely unfortunate, how did the CAR T therapy work for you?
Well, so the funny thing about my car was that I was so tired after my infusions because I was driving myself from the Midwest, from Chicago to Buffalo, New York for these infusions. And I was driving back and forth. And then also I had to get like a jugular catheter for it because my little vein, Paul, was too tiny and it wouldn't have worked
Paul.
for the leukapheresis that I needed to do for CAR T. And I remember I was so tired. I had this giant jugular catheter sticking out of my neck because they send you home with it.
Ugh.
And then, yeah, my car got, I remember being like, oh, I need to put gas in the tank. That's tomorrow me's problem. And then my car got stolen. The reason I got it back was because they only got 2 miles away with it because I've been too tired to put in gas in the tank.
Jokes on the Kia
Classic
boys.
Kia boys problem. Actually,
Yeah.
just because we talked about Kia boys on the podcast like a few months ago. For folks that aren't listening all the fucking time and know what we're talking about, or don't know what the Kia boys are, can you just explain really quickly the Kia boys? I mean, look at Brock. Look at Brock. He has no fucking clue what the hell's going on. Tell Brock what the Kia boys are.
They are a group of very whimsy children that just decide to steal your car for fun. It's not even that they try to sell it. They just like to joyride it, which it's a Kia, which doesn't make sense to me because I don't know, it's like a mom car, but it's because it's very easy to steal. It became a TikTok trend where you can hotwire it with a USB.
The
and
Kia,
so
the Kia is very easy to,
I love
to
Kia.
hotwire. And so
I have a Kia.
A literal gang of boys called the Kia Boys were just on a tear, stealing every Kia they could get their hands on.
It's a hilarious
Including
sounding
Lila's.
gang, a little boy gang.
It's kind of cute, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So basically, the moral of the story is leave your Kia tank on empty because then they won't steal it because they'll only get a mile away and then they'll bring it back.
That's it,
right.
Brock. You got it, man.
That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Don't never drive your Kia on a full tank.
Yeah, because those boys.
Okay, wait, hold on. So how did the CAR T therapy? Did the CAR T therapy do anything?
So the first time I did it, it was a double-blind study. I unfortunately had been in the placebo group the first time, so I did not get better. And my car had been stolen. So I remember telling the clinical trial, being like, listen, if I'm going to come back for the real thing, I actually asked them to put me up in an Airbnb in Canada because I was like, I want to cross the border. And I ended up staying in Lincoln, Canada, in the middle of nowhere in this little tiny home area. And I was like, if my Kia gets stolen here, they can have it because I did everything I could.
The Kia
to
boys
hide
don't
my car
cross.
away.
They don't cross the border.
No.
They don't cross the border. No, they stay on. They stay on their side of the fence.
Lincoln is butt fuck nowhere. You're right. Like that is.
Well, it's probably in between.
Like
It's probably in between Buffalo and Toronto. I'm
it's
assuming.
in between Niagara Falls and Hamilton.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nowhere.
Shout out to all our Lincoln listeners. We do love you.
Man, how much of a bummer is it to be in a trial? Because obviously this happens to like thousands and thousands of people all over the U.S. and who knows how many people.
Okay, how do you find out? How did you find out you're in the placebo?
Yeah, like how does it feel to go, oh, I'm in this thing? Obviously, everybody who's in one of these studies is hoping that they are getting something that could make them better. And I know that some things, when they realize that there is a very clear and obvious benefit, they just go, we're just going to give it to everybody because we've already recognized that it's beneficial.
There's ethical problems with
giving people placebo. But like, how does it feel to be like, oh, I was getting a placebo and now I actually have no idea whether that would have helped me or not?
Yeah, I think the cool thing about this specific trial was that if you wound up in the placebo group, you did get the option to have the definitive choice to do the real thing later.
Oh, okay.
So that was reassuring going into the study, but a lot of studies are not like that. However, it was really difficult psychologically where I was like, is this the universe telling me, like, I don't know, like my Kia got stolen. I wound up in the placebo group. Like I'm doing all these treatments by myself. Like I'm still very weak at this point. I can barely walk. I'm relying on a ventilator.
No car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No car T, no car.
Living in Lincoln.
And then I was like, maybe I shouldn't do it. And then also because you see CAR T survivors or people who do CAR T for a lot of different things, like a lot of different cancers, and then they wind up with a lot of secondary cancers, or you see other people pass away in your CAR T support group, which, mind you, they're there for all kinds of different things and it's a different kind. But yeah, it was very scary because I was like, maybe I need to back out. But I was like, no, I've committed to this. I need to see it through. For me, I think the CAR T did help me, but unfortunately it did not cure me in any sustainable way, or even, I mean, it didn't cure me, but it did help.
So where are you at now with your health? Like, you said you're in the middle of a flare up right now, and you're chronically on the prednisone. But what does like a day in the life look like for you today, navigating MG?
Yeah. And so, and actually, okay, this is going to seem so random, but I was so nervous about today, and I was like calling up all my friends, practicing. I'm like, they're going to ask me about how I'm doing today. And it's like, there's too many layers. There's too much medical lore. It's only an hour. We don't have enough time to get through all my medical lore and life lore. Like, it's too much. And so to not get like depresso talking about it, they made me go out and buy like a little mustache because they were like, Làyla, otherwise you'll yap and make it too serious.
Put the mustache on.
So yes, it's time for the mustache, I fear.
I've got mine on.
Oh my God,
His on.
Làyla, I love
Brock
you.
looks like he's got a little duster going on. We're all in the mustache club
That is
today.
going on social for sure. Just saying it to you
Amazing.
right now.
Oh my goodness.
Make me look attractive, please, with the mustache. But yeah, no, woo, okay. I'm trying not to laugh because, well, that's kind of the point with, okay, I'm not looking at myself. Yes, so my health situation, I would say, is really complicated because there's also a bunch of other conditions and complications I've had along the way that I didn't even have the time to get through to. And also that I've realized not everyone deserves to know in my health journey. And also because it really freaks me out when people try to, like, when they look at me and I can kind of see the wheels spinning behind their eyeballs of, so, like, how long are you going to be around for? Or, like, how disabled are you? Or, like, how disabled are you going to be in the future? And, like, what is your, like, medical trajectory? And my answer to that would be, it's varied a lot in the last few years. At my sickest point, I had actually told my doctors, I think I'm ready to stop all treatments and go to hospice. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've been bedbound for years. I've been doing all these infusions just to stay out of the ICU, and I'm still constantly in the ICU. I'm constantly almost intubated. I'm relying on this non-invasive ventilator every day. I see all these myasthenics around me getting better, and then for some reason I'm not. And I'm also getting all these other comorbid conditions with everything that is affecting my quality of life and all these complications. And my doctor, bless him if he's hearing this, or I might send this to him, my PCP, he was like, I'm not going to try to convince you one way or the other because I know how I feel about hospice care, but this is like a you decision. I do just want to make it well known to you that if you do decide to go off all your treatments, you will not have a long time because you will get worse very quickly. And so if you do decide to do this, sorry, that's what I'm doing with the mustache because I'm like, it makes me anxious talking about this. But yeah, he was like, like, I don't know what the eyebrows. Anyway, sorry. I'm so focused right now. So focused right now. Oh my God. Okay. But yeah, he was like, you will not have a long time if you decide to go off your treatment. So I was like, okay, noted. So if you do decide to go into hospice, you have to be 100% sure. And he was like, have you talked to other people about it? And I was like, no one knows how sick I am. In fact, I don't even think people really know I have myasthenia. And he was like, I need you to start talking to people about your ideas about hospice and then get back to me about what you want to do. I have since decided that is, I do have an emergency hospice plan in place. But today, what I like to tell people is that I'm doing a lot better. I'm a lot more stable, but that can change at any moment in time. And it's so dependent on so many factors that I also just don't know. I wish I could tell people, like, I don't know what my health future holds because even my doctors don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? Nobody knows about their own personal health future, right? God damn, it's so hard it's so hard to, I've never had to battle not laughing while someone has been saying something so profoundly like not funny, than watching you say all of that while watching that mustache slowly fall off of your face.
I think it's also like, I think also like the thing that I couldn't help but think as you were describing that, because like to me over the last, hour that we've been talking, like even though you have told us about all of these things, all of these shitty experiences with doctors and like all of these diagnoses and the things that come along with the symptoms from all the things that you've experienced and all of that stuff, my head never was able to go to the place that you brought us where it was like, I might just stop and like come to an end. Like that didn't cross my mind. So when you say that, it made me think about how like a snapshot into somebody's life, like looking at someone's social media is like not everything. And like there are a million layers to people, and like what you get in 10 minutes or an hour
or even
does not
years,
necess-
or even a
years, like,
number of years
does not give you like all of the insight into like everything that person is feeling and going through and like how they're thinking about life. Like the way that you spoke for the last hour, I just like I wouldn't have thought that. And so when you lay that out, like it just made me feel like, oh, holy shit. Like just because you are able to show up here and like be, an amazing person to speak with, an amazing guest, and like bring like such energy to the conversation, like does not mean that is how you are or can be at every moment of every day while you're going through all this stuff.
I also spin it though the other way, because like I was listening to the end of what you're saying and how you're like, the doctor looked at me and said, take a beat back on this. Like if I was in your shoes with all the things that the doctors have said over the course of your journey, it would have been hard for me to be like, okay, I'll listen to this doctor. I'll take this doctor's advice after everybody after time has been like, nope, you have this. Nope, you have that. Nope. And so for that doctor, for one, to be real and be like, take a beat back and go back and then come to me, and not just literally shoot you down and say, no, we're not doing this. Like I also credit you and the doctor for you saying, yeah, okay, I'll listen to this, and the doctor for being real and being like, I want you to take a step back.
Yeah, he was so lovely about it, because he did put in the referral for me for hospice. I do have a plan of care in place, but he was just so, I really felt listened by my doctor for the first time in a long time, like actually listened, because anytime I had gone in for my checkups with all my other physicians, they're like, I don't know. Yeah. To your point. Yeah. There's just so many times where I felt like I wasn't being listened to, but this particular PCP, I mean, had seen me struggle for a couple years firsthand, but not only that, but, I don't know. He didn't even skip a beat of like, why are we talking about hospice? He just immediately understood.
Yeah. What would you say is the biggest thing that myasthenia gravis has taken away from you?
I mean, it has fundamentally changed everything in my life, but I think it has really fundamentally changed my ability to trust people. And I know how that sounds, because I do have such amazing people around me, and I have such supportive people around me, and I love them so much, and they cheer me on and do things like this with me, where they practice with me with like a mustache so that this can go well, and I do feel so loved and supported in life. But also, I think for me, and I've noticed this trend with a lot of people in my support group for myasthenia, is that both things can be true at the same time. Yes, I felt heavily supported by a lot of people, and I also felt extremely let down in ways that I could have never in a million years foreseen by other people in my life, where it just fundamentally changed my view on like romantic relationships, friendships, even familial like relationships and like dynamics in families. Because everything changed after that. Because now I was no longer Làyla. I was like disabled Làyla or chronically ill Làyla, or maybe she's just anxious Làyla, and now it's like maybe it's terminal Làyla. We never know with her, and like I was already having such a hard time navigating those things emotionally, and for me it was difficult to find that. I found that I don't know why, like some people in my life in that really critical, vulnerable time period in my life made my life more difficult too, on top of that. And I thought, like, is it something about my life experience? Is it something about me that I'm attracting these situations? And it was really healing to finally hear other people talk about it, like on these podcasts and like in the support group, where I think society puts on this like idea, especially like in Hollywood, like you see all these like cancer films and where like the person just suddenly gets better and like they had people around them and then they found the love of their life, where I felt like it was more like, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie 50-50 with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, where like he has a girlfriend, but like he gets cancer and then she cheats on him during treatments, and then she's kind of like, I don't want to go inside and like take you to chemo because like doctors kind of like, I don't know, like hospitals are kind of depressing. Verbatim, I had someone in my life tell me like, oh, I don't know if like, I don't think I can go to like an infusion with you because hospitals kind of freak me out. And I was like, what? Like,
They're like, they're like, are you sick right now? They freak you out?
What would you say
is difficult for
what would you say is the biggest thing that it's given you?
I would say it has given me a lot of let me think on this. Actually, I want to take it off, but then I'm like, is this what like men feel like when they shave and they're like, oh, I feel naked now.
It is.
Yeah. Actually, Brock had a full head of hair, full beard, full mustache right before this podcast, and then when he came on, I was like, oh, goo.
Yeah, I just took off my toupee. That's all I did.
You're taking a big hit. You're taking a big hit today, Brock. It's time for you to take a trip to Turkey, I think, to satisfy Jer's vanity.
I'm not coming back on this podcast. I don't know.
My plan worked. Sorry. What was the biggest thing that's given you?
Biggest thing that it has given me, I would say like, it has taught me that I'm way more resilient than I ever thought I was. But then also, it has taken many years to get to this point, but it has taught me that I shouldn't be a people pleaser because actually that could lead to a lot of autoimmune conditions, as it turns out. So to really work on what I can work within myself to be a healthier person, but then also, I don't know. I really learned to love myself, as corny as that sounds, even with all these weird ailments attached to me all these years later, where like, I think ironically, I love myself more now than I did when I was able-bodied. And I'm so much better about my boundaries now with people now that I'm not able-bodied. And it has really given me the gift of discernment of, just what I should and shouldn't entertain in life, and to try to do it in the most compassionate way possible too. Like I don't think we should all just be like cutting people off in our lives. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying I'm strangely more confident now because I don't have the time to not be anymore. I can't afford to not be confident in this lifetime anymore because I need to be confident to advocate for myself, for my treatments in my life, and to make sure that the people around me are pushing me upwards too, you know? I don't know if that made sense, but
it totally did. And Làyla, I gotta say, like that confidence, at least from my perspective, really shines through and has shined through in this conversation. You're an absolute joy to hang out with and talk to, and I'm eternally grateful that you were willing to come on the show today with us and so openly share your experiences and the hardships that you've been through, but also doing it from a perspective that like made it engaging and fun. I mean, the first person who's ever come on the show who's brought literal fucking props to like give us a bit of a visual enhancement as to what it may feel like to be in your shoes, or to, take a really serious moment and like shoehorn humor into it, regardless of whether or not we want you to or not, with a fake mustache. I like it. Just you really are a joy to talk to, and I'm so grateful that we've had a chance to meet you and have you be a part of the Sickboy, the Sickboy catalog
universe.
Now. Yeah. Welcome to the Sickboy universe. Is there anything that you want to plug or say or kind of leave the people with before we wrap it up?
Yeah, no, I would just say, I fear social media, so I'm not like a TikTok savvy person, but I will say I have found so many amazing people through online sleuthing on Instagram. Like I was such a weirdo when I first got diagnosed. I was like, I'm going to find other myasthenics, even if I have to like go FBI mode and find them online. So if you do want to find me on Instagram, I mean, I don't post content because I'm just, I don't know, I'm just a person. But if anyone wants to commiserate with me on all our shared ailments, that would be great. And then also, I've been working on a little project of, I finished writing a couple different children's books, and I've been trying to illustrate them myself. And I've since found out I am a shite illustrator. So if you are listening to this and you are an illustrator and that piques your interest, let me know.
Well, do you want to give your Instagram handle, or do you want me to just put that in the show notes? Or did you?
Yes.
I mean, no pressure. I'm not gonna like, you don't have to dox yourself, but like.
No, that'd be amazing. No, honestly, it's more so my Instagram is kind of confusing because it's in Spanish. It's donde period anda period lie, which means like where is lie, like where in the world is she? So I'm sorry for those that don't speak Spanish, but yes, that is my Instagram if you want to find me and talk about myasthenia and whatnot.
Donde es Carmen Sandiego?
That's right. I feel like you missed a word there.
Whatever.
Miss a world?
Donde es
Mondo? I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm going to Barcelona in a few weeks. I should really brush up on my Spanish. Well, we will put a little link to your social media, your Instagram, in the show notes if anybody wants to follow along with your journey or reach out. You know, someone who also is going through MG. Again, this was such a joy. Thank you so much for this, Brock. Thank you, brother. Always a pleasure to have you in the hot wheels seat. Anything you want to say?
That's why my ass is burning because you. That's why my ass is burning because you put me in the hot seat. That's
there we go. Look at him. He's here all week, folks.
Whoa there, Brock. Whoa there.
Làyla's getting it on too.
With love, though, Brock, you're an honorary Mexican to me, just so you know.
There you go.
Because that was brought up earlier.
That's a high honor.
Hey, look at that.
That is a high honor.
Good work, hombre. All right. Well, this has been just a treat, and thank you so much, Làyla. Really, really enjoyed this.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.